Ever wonder why the best sci-fi films never made it to your watch list? While blockbusters gobbled up attention, these hidden masterpieces disappeared into the void of cinema history. From psychic nightmares to time-bending paradoxes, these forgotten treasures pushed boundaries in ways that still feel revolutionary today. Let's unearth 15 brilliant sci-fi films that time forgot. The Creation of the Humanoids, 1962. Don't let the B-movie title fool you. This philosophical gem was reportedly Andy Warhol's favorite film. Set after nuclear devastation has decimated Earth's population, this talky, stagey production explores humanity's replacement by increasingly sophisticated androids called clickers. The film unfolds almost entirely through philosophical debates rather than action, asking profound questions about consciousness, souls, and what truly defines being human. A resistance group called the Order of Flesh and Blood fears these machines are slowly taking over, but the film's stunning final twist completely upends our understanding of the conflict. While critics dismissed it as too talky in 1962, modern viewers recognize it was tackling the same existential themes Blade Runner would explore 2 decades later. Yes, the sets look like leftovers from a high school play, and yes, the acting occasionally feels mechanical. But the ideas, pure philosophical dynamite. Director Wesley Berry made the film on a microscopic budget, yet the stark, minimalist sets actually enhance the clinical feeling of a world where humanity is being methodically replaced. The humanoids themselves, with their glowing eyes and eerily smooth features, create a genuinely unsettling presence that modern CGI often fails to capture. This is cerebral sci-fi at its most daring, proving that sometimes the most profound films are hiding behind the cheapest production values. Phase 4, 1974. How did the only feature film directed by legendary title sequence designer Saul Bass slip through the cracks? Phase 4 isn't just another nature attacks movie. It's a hypnotic, visually stunning meditation on evolution and collective intelligence. After a cosmic event triggers an evolutionary leap in ants, they begin building mysterious structures and developing a hive mind. Two scientists in an isolated desert lab study the phenomenon, only to discover they're not the observers, they're the experiment. Bass uses extreme close-ups, geometric imagery, and mesmerizing time-lapse photography to make the ants' behavior feel genuinely alien. The original ending, cut before release, was so unsettling that audiences would have left theaters questioning humanity's place in the natural order. Critics didn't know what to make of it, dismissing it as pretentious or too slow. But this isn't a monster movie. It's existential horror where the threat isn't destruction, but replacement. The quiet, methodical erasure of human dominance by a patient, ancient intelligence awakening to its full potential. The film's deliberate pacing and minimal dialogue create a dreamlike atmosphere that burrows into your subconscious like an ant colony slowly expanding beneath the surface. Bass's background in graphic design is evident in every frame. Geometric ant structures contrast with human chaos, suggesting an inhuman order that might be superior to our own. When the film was finally restored with its original ending in 2012, viewers discovered the true extent of Bass's cosmic vision, a transformation of humanity that makes the film's title suddenly, chillingly clear. The Quiet Earth, 1985. Imagine waking up to find yourself completely alone on the planet. No bodies, no chaos, just empty streets and abandoned homes. This New Zealand masterpiece follows a scientist who discovers he's the last man alive after a catastrophic energy project failure called Operation Flashlight. What begins as one man's psychological breakdown evolves into something far stranger when two other survivors appear. The trio's fragile dynamic splinters as they realize the world around them is breaking down at a fundamental level. Time slips, gravity shifts, and reality itself begins to fray at the edges. The film's final sequence is one of the most haunting, visually stunning endings in sci-fi history, a surreal cosmic tableau that's been analyzed and debated for decades. Director Jeff Murphy shot it on a microscopic budget, yet created imagery that rivals 2001. A space odyssey in its strange beauty. Critics praised its philosophical depth, but audiences mostly missed it entirely. This wasn't just another post-apocalyptic thriller. It was an existential nightmare about guilt, redemption, and the crushing weight of being the last witness to humanity's end. Lead actor Bruno Lawrence delivers a masterclass in psychological deterioration, from his initial manic joy at having no responsibilities to profound existential despair as the true horror of his situation sinks in. The film cleverly subverts the last man on earth trope by focusing not on survival but on meaning. What purpose does humanity serve when nearly all evidence of our existence has vanished? Its exploration of isolation hit with renewed force during the pandemic, giving this forgotten gem new relevance 35 years after its release. The American Astronaut, 2001, calling this film a space western musical, barely scratches the surface of its glorious weirdness. Shot in stark black and white and scored by director Corey McCabe's band, The Billy Nair Show, this is sci-fi filmmaking without a safety net. Samuel Curtis, a grizzled interplanetary trader, begins a bizarre series of trades across a retro-futuristic solar system. His mission? Deliver the boy who actually saw a woman's breast to the all-male mining colony on Jupiter, where women are so scarce that men will pay a fortune just to hear stories about them. The film's bizarre musical numbers range from rockabilly to waltz to punk, with lyrics about the girl with the vagina made of glass and the hey boy dance becoming earworms you'll never shake. Throughout this surreal journey, Samuel is pursued by the obsessive Professor Hess, who's been stalking him for years. The New York Times called it a cinematic experience that is simultaneously disturbing, amusing, boring, and fascinating, which perfectly captures its unclassifiable appeal. The Billy Nair Show was described on Wikipedia as a musical group of questionable genre. And the same could be said for this cult film that defies every convention of sci-fi, western, and musical. McCabe creates a solar system that feels both retro and timeless. 1950s diners floating in space, planetary way stations that look like abandoned warehouses, and spacecraft interiors reminiscent of Soviet industrial design. The entire film exists in its own bizarre universe, with internal logic that makes perfect sense within its boundaries, but sounds completely unhinged when described to outsiders. It's not good by any conventional standard, yet it's utterly remarkable in its fearless originality. Primer, 2004, made for just $7,000 by engineer-turned-filmmaker Shane Carruth, Primer demolished the notion that time travel movies need big budgets or flashy effects. Two engineers accidentally discover time travel while working on a side project in their garage, and what follows is the most densely plotted, intellectually demanding time travel film ever made. There are no lightning storms or flux capacitors here, just a sterile white box filled with argon gas that allows objects and eventually people to travel 6 hours into the past. As the timeline fractures, splinters, and loops back on itself, the film refuses to simplify its head-spinning paradoxes. Primer doesn't just require multiple viewings, it demands them along with diagrams, timelines, and lengthy forum discussions. Carruth deliberately omits exposition, forcing viewers to piece together the overlapping timelines and competing versions of the main characters who begin to manipulate events and ultimately each other. The film won the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance despite baffling many critics. Roger Ebert famously wrote, "I don't understand the movie, and I've seen it twice." That complexity is precisely why it's developed such a devoted cult following. Shot in genuine locations with natural lighting and non-professional actors, Primer has a documentary-like authenticity that makes its impossible scenario feel disturbingly plausible. The dialogue is dense with technical jargon that Carruth, an engineer himself, never dumbs down for the audience. The characters speak in half-sentences and technical shorthand, like real colleagues who don't need to explain concepts they both understand. Unlike most sci-fi that simplifies time travel for mass appeal, Primer respects its audience enough to challenge them with the genuine moral and logical complexities that would arise if time travel were real. The Endless, 2017. Two brothers who escaped a UFO death cult receive a mysterious videotape years later and decide to return for one last visit. What begins as a seemingly straightforward cult story spirals into a mind-bending exploration of time loops, cosmic horror, and fraternal bonds. Directors Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead cast themselves as the brothers, lending an unsettling authenticity to their strained relationship. As they revisit Camp Arcadia, they discover people trapped in temporal prisons, repeating the same moments forever while being observed by an unseen entity. The film brilliantly ties together Lovecraftian cosmic horror with a deeply emotional story about brothers whose protective relationship has become toxic. One brother remembers the cult as a haven, the other remembers it as dangerous manipulation. Both are partially right. Critics praised its ambitious storytelling and subtle special effects achieved on a shoestring budget. The Endless actually connects to the director's earlier film, Resolution, creating a shared universe where time itself is malleable and ancient forces toy with human lives for their amusement. The cosmic horror elements are effectively rendered through subtle visual effects rather than expensive CGI. Strange phenomena like perfectly circular clouds, impossible physics, and fractured realities are depicted with restraint that makes them more unsettling than flashier approaches. What elevates it above typical indie sci-fi is how it uses its high-concept premise to explore very human questions about freedom, choice, and the comfort of belonging, even to something dangerous. Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, 2020. This Japanese micro-budget wonder pulls off a seemingly impossible feat, a fresh take on time travel told in what appears to be one continuous shot. A cafe owner discovers his computer upstairs is showing images from his cafe monitor downstairs, exactly 2 minutes in the future. What begins as a quirky experiment escalates as his friends discover they can create a time TV by pointing the monitors at each other, extending the time gap and opening a window to increasingly distant futures. The entire film unfolds in real time as the characters test the boundaries of their discovery. Director Junta Yamaguchi shot this 70-minute marvel on an iPhone for roughly $25,000, hiding the cuts to create the illusion of a single take. This formal constraint perfectly mirrors the film's time loop concept, creating mounting tension as the characters' experiments grow increasingly dangerous. Critics called it the most fun anyone has had with time travel since Back to the Future, despite its minimal resources. The film's brilliance lies in how it finds genuine wonder and danger in a seemingly minor temporal displacement. The actors deliver naturalistic performances that ground the high-concept premise, reacting with authentic curiosity, excitement, and eventually fear as they realize the implications of their discovery. The technical achievement is astonishing. Coordinating actors across multiple floors while maintaining the illusion of real-time causality required mathematical precision in planning and execution. It proves that sci-fi cinema doesn't need massive budgets or CGI spectacle, just a clever premise executed with mathematical precision and genuine heart. Aniara, 2018. Based on a 1956 Swedish poem, this devastating film follows a luxury space cruise ship carrying migrants from a ruined Earth to Mars. When space debris forces the ship off course, what should be a 3-week journey becomes an endless drift into the void with no hope of rescue. The ship, Aniara, is essentially a shopping mall in space, complete with restaurants, holographic nature rooms, and AI-guided meditation chambers. As months stretch into years, we watch society's collapse in microcosm as passengers cycle through denial, hedonism, cult formation, and ultimately, profound despair. The film's unflinching bleakness divided critics, with some praising its existential courage, while others found it punishingly grim. Directors Pelle Kogerman and Hugo Lilja create a clinically sterile environment that grows increasingly chaotic as the veneer of civilization crumbles away. What makes Aniara uniquely devastating is its cosmic timescale. We follow these characters for decades as they hurtle through the emptiness, their lives reduced to a meaningless speck in the universe's indifferent expanse. The film includes shocking sequences showing how social structures completely disintegrate over time. Ritualistic orgies develop as desperate attempts to feel something, while suicide becomes a rational choice for many passengers. The ship's AI, AMIMA, designed to comfort humans with memories of Earth, eventually overloads with their collective grief and shuts down, removing their last connection to home. It's not just about a spaceship lost in the void, it's about humanity's insignificance in a universe that doesn't care if we survive or perish. This is hard sci-fi at its most philosophically ruthless. Prospect, 2018. Before Pedro Pascal donned a helmet in The Mandalorian, he played a silver-tongued, ruthless prospector in this gritty space western. Set on a toxic alien moon, the film follows a teenage girl and her father harvesting valuable deposits from alien pods, a process as dangerous as defusing a bomb. When their mission goes wrong, the girl reluctantly teams up with Pascal's character, a charismatic bandit whose flowery speech contrasts with his brutal survival instincts. Their uneasy alliance drives the narrative as they navigate this beautiful but deadly landscape. Directors Zeke Earl and Chris Caldwell built their alien world from the ground up with practical effects, real locations, and handmade props. Every piece of technology feels worn, repaired, and lived in, from rickety space pods to pressure suits, patched with duct tape. Critics praised its immersive world-building and Pascal's scene-stealing performance, with his character delivering ornate monologues while committing morally questionable acts. Prospect excels by grounding its sci-fi elements in economic realities often ignored by the genre. The Pacific Northwest forests double brilliantly as an alien landscape, with slight color grading creating an otherworldly atmosphere without expensive digital effects. The elaborate prop-building process included creating custom breathing apparatus, functional-looking weapons, and detailed extraction tools that became central to the plot rather than mere set dressing. This isn't about heroes saving the galaxy. It's about desperate people risking everything for a chance at a better life, making tough moral compromises along the way. Coherence, 2013. 8 friends gather for a dinner party on the night a comet passes overhead. When the power goes out, they notice a house down the street still has lights. What follows is a masterclass in low-budget, high-concept horror as reality fractures and the group discovers they're caught in a quantum nightmare. Director James Ward Byrkit shot the film over 5 nights in his own house with no script, just character notes and plot points, forcing the actors to improvise their dialogue. This approach creates a naturalistic tension as the characters struggle to comprehend their increasingly bizarre situation. The comet's passing has created overlapping realities, and the dinner guests soon realize they're encountering versions of themselves from parallel universes. Paranoia escalates as they can no longer be certain who's who, or which reality is real. Critics praised its intelligent approach to quantum physics and the mounting dread achieved without special effects. Made for just $50,000, Coherence proves that smart sci-fi doesn't need a massive budget, just a solid premise and psychological insight. The ingenious plot device of having characters write numbers on slips of paper to identify themselves becomes increasingly terrifying as these identifiers are manipulated or discovered in unexpected places. Byrkit uses darkness and limited information masterfully, allowing viewers to experience the same confusion and paranoia as the characters. The film's brilliance lies in how it uses its sci-fi concept to explore human behavior under pressure, revealing how quickly trust erodes when identity itself becomes uncertain. Resolution, 2012. Before making The Endless, directors Benson and Moorhead crafted this genre-defying gem about a man who chains his meth-addicted friend to a wall in an abandoned cabin to force him through cold turkey detox. But something in the surrounding woods is watching them and communicating through increasingly disturbing found media. VHS tapes, film reels, and photographs mysteriously appear, each showing glimpses of possible futures, many ending violently for our protagonists. As they investigate, they uncover evidence of multiple people throughout history who've been trapped in the same bizarre situation. The film subverts horror tropes by making its characters surprisingly rational, investigating the supernatural events with skepticism rather than making foolish decisions. This creates a unique meta-narrative about storytelling itself. Are they caught in someone's story? Can they change the ending? Critics praised its genre-bending creativity, though many viewers were initially baffled by its refusal to explain its mysteries. Resolution works on multiple levels, as a tense addiction drama, a supernatural thriller, and ultimately a meditation on narrative itself. The found footage elements are brilliantly inverted. Instead of the characters recording events, something else is recording them and showing them possible outcomes. The indigenous reservation setting adds layers of colonial guilt and intrusion, with the protagonist trespassing on land where countless others have suffered similar fates. Its modest budget forced the directors to suggest cosmic horror rather than show it, creating a psychological unease that big-budget films rarely achieve. The Hidden, 1987. This criminally overlooked sci-fi action thriller combines body-snatching aliens, buddy cop dynamics, and surprising philosophical depth. An alien parasite moves from host to host, turning ordinary citizens into adrenaline junkies committing increasingly violent crimes while blasting heavy metal from stolen boomboxes. FBI agent Lloyd Gallagher teams up with a skeptical detective to track the entity. McLaughlin's oddly formal speech and awkward mannerisms hint at a secret that upends the film's dynamic halfway through. He's also an alien, pursuing the parasite across the stars. Director Jack Shoulder balances gore-soaked action sequences with genuinely thoughtful moments about identity and consciousness. When the parasite transfers to a new body, is the original person still in there somewhere? What makes us who we are if our bodies can be hijacked? Critics praised its kinetic energy and McLaughlin's performance, coming just after his breakout role in Blue Velvet. The Hidden influenced everything from Men in Black to Fallen, yet never received the recognition it deserved. The film's practical effects still impress today, particularly the grotesque parasite transfers and spectacularly bloody squib work during shootouts. The chase sequences, often involving ordinary people suddenly becoming skilled getaway drivers, maintain genuine suspense despite the inherent absurdity of the premise. It remains a perfect example of how genre films in the 80s could combine B-movie thrills with surprising philosophical depth, all while maintaining a wicked sense of humor about humanity's worst impulses. Time Crimes, 2007 Spanish director Nacho Vigalondo created this perfectly calibrated time travel thriller with just 4 characters, 1 location, and a narrative that folds back on itself with clockwork precision. After glimpsing a naked woman in the woods, a middle-aged man investigates, only to be attacked by a scissors-wielding figure with a pink bandage wrapped around his head. Fleeing his attacker, he encounters a scientist who hides him in a strange tank, which turns out to be an experimental time machine that sends him back 1 hour. From there, the film becomes a darkly comic exploration of causality as our protagonist realizes he must fulfill the very timeline he witnessed, becoming both victim and perpetrator of his own misfortune. Unlike most time travel films that promise escape from fate, Time Crimes traps its characters in a deterministic loop where every attempt to fix the past only ensures it happens exactly as it already did. The film's brilliance lies in how each timeline reveals new perspectives on events we thought we understood. Critics praised its airtight internal logic and growing sense of dread as the protagonist's moral compromises escalate with each iteration of the loop. Made for just 2.5 million euros, it demonstrates how the best sci-fi often emerges from tight constraints rather than unlimited resources. The film's rural Spanish setting provides a perfect backdrop for its twisted events. Isolated houses separated by dense woods create natural barriers between different time streams, allowing multiple versions of the same character to exist simultaneously without immediately encountering each other. Cara Elizalde delivers a remarkable performance as Hector, subtly shifting his characterization as his experience of the time loop makes him increasingly desperate and morally compromised. The result is a masterclass in narrative efficiency that forces filmmakers to focus on concept and execution rather than spectacle. The Man from Earth, 2007. What if a man had been alive since the Cro-Magnon era, never aging, moving on every decade before people noticed? This dialogue-driven masterpiece takes place entirely in a professor's living room as he reveals to his colleagues that he's 14,000 years old, sparking intense debate about history, religion, and the nature of immortality. Written by Jerome Bixby on his deathbed, the film avoids flashbacks or visual effects, relying entirely on conversation and the power of imagination. As the professor casually mentions meeting Buddha and sailing with Columbus, his academic friends attempt to disprove his seemingly impossible claims. The film's low-budget $200,000 became its greatest strength, forcing director Richard Shankman to focus on the intellectual and emotional dynamics as skepticism gives way to fascination and eventually fear. When the professor implies he was Jesus, just a man whose teachings were misunderstood, the discussion takes a provocative turn. Initially released direct to DVD with no marketing budget, the film became a word-of-mouth phenomenon, particularly among academic and religious communities. Ironically, piracy saved it. When it became widely shared online, director Shankman thanked the pirates for spreading his work, leading to legitimate sales from viewers who loved it. David Lee Smith anchors the film with a subtle, understated performance as John Oldman. Old man, get it? Conveying centuries of experience through quiet confidence rather than showy dramatics. Each character represents a different academic discipline: anthropology, archaeology, biology, psychology, religion, allowing the film to explore the implications of immortality from multiple perspectives. The Man from Earth proves that sometimes the most profound sci-fi requires no spaceships or aliens, just the radical power of an idea fully explored. X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes, 1963. Roger Corman's masterpiece of existential horror follows Dr. James Xavier, Ray Milland, who develops eye drops that allow him to see through solid objects. What begins as a medical breakthrough becomes a descent into madness as his vision penetrates deeper layers of reality with each dose. At first, Xavier uses his ability to diagnose patients by looking inside their bodies and to cheat at casinos by seeing through cards. But his vision grows increasingly unbearable, seeing through clothes, then skin, then bone, and eventually into dimensions beyond human comprehension. The film's psychedelic visuals were groundbreaking for 1963, using color filters and optical effects to simulate Xavier's expanding perception. But the true horror isn't what he sees, it's that he can't stop seeing. His gift becomes an inescapable curse as reality becomes unbearable to witness. Critics initially dismissed it as exploitation, but it's since been recognized as a philosophical horror film asking profound questions. Is there knowledge humans shouldn't possess? What happens when we see too much? The film's final line, "I can still see," takes on terrifying implications considering what Xavier does immediately before saying it. Corman made it for just $300,000 but created imagery that continues to disturb viewers decades later. Milland, an Oscar winner slumming it in B-movies by this point, brings unexpected gravitas to the role, portraying Xavier's transformation from arrogant scientist to tortured visionary with chilling conviction. The film influenced everything from David Cronenberg's body horror to Grant Morrison's comic Doom Patrol, yet remains underappreciated by casual sci-fi fans who assume anything with X-ray in the title must be campy trash rather than a genuinely unsettling meditation on the limits of human perception. So which of these mind-bending treasures will you be hunting down first? From time loops to cosmic horror, these forgotten gems prove that the most revolutionary sci-fi often exists far from the mainstream. What other obscure masterpieces deserve recognition? Drop your recommendations below, or tell us if we're completely wrong about any of these selections. After all, isn't challenging reality what great sci-fi is all about?